why you should be chopped. So that was another video, and I just got this whiteboard a couple days ago, and I think it's very interesting to stand up in front of a whiteboard and talk for hours. So so I'm going to be doing that. I'm going to be talking for not maybe not an hour, just as soon as I can get the thought out. And today's lecture is going to be on why you should be chopped, and lonely, and most of all, why you should not seek validation from others. It's something that's thrown around a lot, but it's not really comprehended because it's very complex, this idea, and I hope to elaborate it in a much more efficient manner in which it could be dissected and understood. Of course, if you had seen my previous lecture on suicide and the immorality of suicide, this would probably be a bit more comprehensive, because we will be using some similar terms from that lecture in this lecture. So with that being said, let's get into it, right? So why you should be chopped? I think it's important first that we define exactly what we mean by the word chopped. I think we all kind of carry a notion of what it means to be chopped. This is very important, though, that we have a strict understanding on this term, because we do have a lot of slang, especially in our generation, or my generation. We have a lot of slang that we know intuitively, but we don't really understand, and it gets thrown about, and this idea of throwing words about without understanding the true meaning of it is very common, and we say things that we don't necessarily mean. So in defining the word chopped, at least for this specific lecture, it's important that we identify the group of people in which we associate the word chopped with. I think this may be the best way to get into it because, again, this is a slang term that has been used in our generation more prominently. So I think we should, understand what we mean when we say that word. So chopped usually means a subgroup of people that are not physically attractive, right? That are not. They tend to be physically unattractive. So, for example, right, when we see someone that's physically unattractive, we tend to say, "Damn, that person is chopped as fuck." That's just how we use the word, right? So when we see someone that's physically unattractive, we tend to say that they're chopped. Another way in which we could use the word, and I've heard people use it before, is like, yeah, that food is chopped, right? So that food is unappealing, right? So that's some chopped ass shit, as some people would say. It's some chopped ass shit. So there's three words that are being used there to describe the same thing: chopped ass and shit. So we have unappealing as well, to mean the word chopped. And if we really look at it, right, one describes human beings, and then the other describes situations or items or food, things like of that nature that is not necessarily human beings. So I think perhaps this could correlate with human beings too, wouldn't you say? So I say that we should really go with this definition of the word chopped, that being unappealing, so that we can move forward and have a productive discussion. But I think it's fair to say that chopped would mean unappealing, right? So we have a definition of the word chopped that we can use. But why should someone be unappealing? Well, the reason why someone should be unappealing is so that they don't seek validation. So this is the main principle as to why someone should be chalked, why someone should be unappealing, why someone should be bored and lonely, because of the fact that we don't want to be seeking validation from others. So now this starts to narrow our audience to a specific category of people. A category of people that inherently seek validation from others. Reasons as to why is unbeknownst to me, nor do I care. The idea is that we move past that and that we don't seek validation from anybody and we live our own lives. So, what is it then? Well, where's this necessary connection, right? Because you should be unappealing so you don't seek validation from others. But why is unappealing a necessary condition towards seeking validation from others? Why is that a necessary condition? Why must someone be unappealing in order to not seek validation? Well, because of the fact that if you are seeking validation from someone, you are necessarily trying to appear as appealing to somebody, right? So by seeking validation from someone, you must be appealing. And if you were appealing and you were validated, then you have sought. So seeking validation leads towards coming off as appealing. If you are appealing, and then you are validated. If you are validated, then again you are sought. However, the issue comes from this sort of transgression here, being appealing or transforming yourself to be appealing. Reason why is because of these subjective principles, right? So again, we are talking to a specific group of audience members here, and for lack of better words, I'm going to use people my age, around my age. I am in college, and I am part of the generation of social media. And with that being said, what people find appealing tends to be very categorical. Right? People find appealing tends to be categorical. The reason why it's categorical, again, this is going back to the previous lecture, is because people have communal beliefs. Rather, people prefer to have communal beliefs. It's more comforting, it's more validating, and it's also more it just justifies, it justifies itself. To have a similar belief as a whole community makes you feel accepted and part of something, right? So when you have these communal beliefs, you expect others to follow in said communal beliefs, and you have these expectations. All right. So you have these expectations in which people must conform to, and if they don't conform to that, then they do not become appealing. If they do conform to it, then they fit the category, right? So again, the problem is here where people have categories of what they find to be appealing, which I think is usually promoted through social media or engagement with any sort of media. Again, a lot of modern Western philosophers really open this idea towards the world providing information to create who we are, right? So when we have an influx of information being given to us at a rapid pace, we start to adjust to that subconsciously. We start to adjust towards this constant intake of information, where we have to constantly try, and we do keep up with the times, so that we can take in this information to fulfill or to fill up or to provide some sort of meaning. Again, this is going back to the last lecture. Meaning that is necessarily correlated to a belief, right? We have this belief, and by having this belief, we want others to justify and to validate those beliefs that we have, to support that meaning, right? So by supporting that meaning, we have these expectations that people are supposed to meet, and if they do not meet these expectations, they do not fit in the category. If they do meet these expectations, then they fit into the aesthetic category. So it becomes to a point where I think it's important too to explain how what people find appealing is categorical, right? So what people find appealing is categorical. But even more than that, the categories are, I mean, maybe I'm reiterating myself, but they're very stereotypical. Right? The categories that people have are very stereotypical. The reason why they're very stereotypical is because we are so used to the things in the past, right? So it's the problem of induction really. You know, when the sun constantly rises and then sets and then rises and then sets, we have the induction, the expectation, the inductive reasoning to assume that the sun is going to rise tomorrow morning and it will set tomorrow afternoon. So with that being said, when we have information that is constantly mingled around with other people, and they adhere to celebrities that participate in these sort of things, or whatever thing that we aspire or look up to takes part in these things, we have the inductive reasoning to assume that these things are good, that these things are pleasurable, that these things are right and necessary. However, that's false, right? It's not the case that that the inductive reasoning proves to be true, because it is also the case that the sun could not rise tomorrow, or that something that you did not consider could be perhaps beneficial towards you much more than what you are used to considering. So again, appealing is categorical. What people find appealing is categorical. Categorical is stereotypical. Stereotypical as in not unique, essentially, right? Not unique. It's not unique. And this is a key part here, it being not unique. Because intuitively, we would think that the word unique is of benefit, right? We would think that the word unique is of benefit. So why would people like things that are not unique? Well, because they were unique at a time, right? They were unique at a time, but they continue to happen, and more people engage. So like, for example, if there was a TikTok trend where I, hit the whoa, for example, right? Everybody's gonna think that's unique. So everybody's gonna start hitting the whoa, and then everybody's gonna start hitting the whoa, and then the trend dies out. And then once the trend dies out, there's a new trend. When someone hits the whip, and then the nay-nay, and then that's the new trend. So somebody else hits the whip, the nay-nay, and then, it dies out. But then there's constantly new trends that never last, right? There's no trends that actually ever last. So because there's nothing that never lasts, it becomes not unique, because of the fact that it's not lasting. Something that is unique is something that is unique and stays unique. If it's not unique anymore, it is no longer unique, right? So the things that people find stereotypical, it's not unique. Usually things that are not unique are things that do not conform towards the public. So for example, right, things that are unique are things that do not conform to societal norms. Things that are not unique do not conform to societal norms. I mean, things that are unique do not conform to societal norms, right? So Yeah, this is gonna bring us over to unappealing, and then we'll get more into specifics as to what is considered unappealing. But we pretty much understand that the reason why you should not transform yourself to something appealing again is because then you'd be transforming yourself to something categorical, right? You'd be associating yourself into a category. In that category, you end up adhering to something of a stereotypical principle. Those stereotypical principles are not unique, and since they are not unique, they become forgotten. So when you have a when you're conforming towards a stereotypical principle, and you have nothing to offer, right? When you have nothing to offer in engagement with society, and you're not unique, you're not special, you're not anything of interest. You may be at first glance, but you don't maintain that interest. You then become forgotten. There becomes someone else that enters the picture that is much more unique. And that person who's much more unique disrupts the system in which the attention is now given to that person until perhaps that person is forgotten and somebody else enters the picture. So that is the problem with transforming to unappealing, because with that, you're forgotten. If you're forgotten, then you're not validated. If you're not validated, then you don't get what you sought, and then you enter an existential crisis because the belief that you had, the belief that of seeking validation was not ever full circle. You did not accomplish that belief. Somebody else entered the picture and persuaded you that you cannot seek validation. So you are now acting without a belief. You don't know what to believe in. Or if anything, you have a terrible belief of yourself. And it goes to shit, right? So that's why you shouldn't try to be appealing. I don't even know if there's really anything too much to say about unappealing, besides the benefits of being unappealing, right? So I think the first thing that we should get rid of right now is the physical attractive notion towards being chopped, right? So there's physical attractiveness, right? Physical attractiveness. Usually what is physically attractive is something that is that provides pleasure, upon engagement. Provides pleasure upon interaction, I think I should say, right? Engagement is too strict. So what is usually considered physically attractive is something that provides pleasure upon interaction, right? So I think a good example for this, if you don't mind, a good example would be, we'll draw a picture of a person, right? This person has their hands in the air, and we'll draw a picture of another person. This person also has their hands in the air. So we'll put some biceps on this person, right? Some big biceps on that person. And then this person, we'll keep it the same. We'll call this person macro, and we'll call this person micro. Right? So obviously the physically attractive person would be the person with the big biceps, right? So Mr. Macro here would be considered the physically attractive person. Now, this physically attractive person who has the big biceps immediately fits a stereotype, right? So they immediately fit into the categorical stereotype of physical attractiveness. right? So macro immediately fits this stereotype of physical attractiveness. And with that comes implications, right? So a lot of things are predicated off of this category of physical attractiveness. Some things being predicated are confidence. Another thing that is being predicated is predicable. Confidence would be one. Another would be stupid. Right. And perhaps another one would be self-conscious, right? So. Right. So there's a lot of things that can be predicated off of this categorical stereotype. And these, again, are stereotypes, right? So these are just stereotypes that one could assume if someone is, if someone has a macro, if someone is macro. So they're confident, probably stupid, and they're also perhaps self-conscious. We could also assume that they get girls as well, right? I mean, if you have big biceps, you know, they say that the curls get the girls. So, I mean, we're not going to put that on there. But, you know, womanizer or something like that could be put into the picture. And I think that falls in line with self-conscious. But, so they immediately fit that categorical stereotype. And with that being said, you know, there's some women out there, and there's also some men out there that are fine with adhering towards these categorical stereotypes. You know, this is something of regular notion to them, right? So they're going to submit towards this way of being quickly. Either they're going to submit towards it, or they're going to long for something else. Categorical stereotypes, again, you're part of a communal belief. I think we should draw this out. You would be part of a categorical stereotype, then be part of a communal belief. And a communal belief has its own predications of comfort, reassurance, etc. So, yeah, a communal belief has its predications of comfort and reassurance. So, someone would obviously want to adhere towards those principles because that is what provides the most comfort, being part of this community, right? But again, if we were to focus on micro, right? So micro, where's micro at? So if we were to get micro here, right? So micro does not fit the categorical the category of stereotypes, right? So micro is actually a different stereotype, which is problematic because we tend to fit him into a different stereotype wrongfully. So by not adhering towards a specific stereotype, micro is actually part of a assumed category. An assumed category are things that people interpret based off of first encounter, right? So they actually have no idea who this person could be because they're not wearing any sort of clothing, per se. You know, there's nothing to really quantify as to what that person is because they don't have any clothing. So we immediately assume the category in which they are, they tend to be what we would say chopped. Which is slang, you know, it's a slang term. And again, a slang term are terms that we do not understand, we just say intuitively. To fill a gap of a lack, to fill in this lack, right? We say chopped because we don't necessarily know anything about that person. We just use a word to fill in that gap, to explain something. A classic example is vibe. You know, this is such a vibe. But what does vibe specifically mean? How do you specifically feel about a specific situation? You're vibing to this music, but what is it that you like about the music? You know, these are things that we don't know. You know, it's also like the N word, for example. The N word, it's so pluralistic. All these words are so pluralistic that they can be used in different ways, and the only way you can quantify the meaning is based off of the tone. So it becomes problematic when you use a word that can be quantified based off of the tone alone, and in the scenario when the word itself doesn't provide any sort of meaning or substance. So with Micro, you know, he's put into an assumed category, and in that assumed category, he becomes something chopped. And again, we define chopped as something intuitively at first glance prima facie unappealing. But again, chopped is a slang term. With it being a slang term, that means we speak of it intuitively, which means that they are, if it's spoken intuitively, they are susceptible to persuasion, right? That's the whole idea. They're susceptible to persuasion, right? So they'll be susceptible to persuasion. However, we did say that we should not seek validation, right? We did say that because if they're susceptible to persuasion, then we shouldn't persuade, because if we persuade, then we would be, one, imposing our own sort of beliefs onto another person. Again, this is better understood in the previous lecture. If not, then we may be invalidated because we were seeking validation, which is also its own sort of category of being. So we should not seek validation because it could lead towards an existential crisis, right? So what do we do then? You know, we're in this assumed category. We're chopped. But chopped, we have hope, because chopped, people don't know what they mean when they say this word. It's spoken intuitively, they're susceptible to persuasion, but we can't persuade. Well, here's the thing, right? This is why you should be chopped. So Micro here, I don't like Micro. Micro has a whole lot on them right now, but he ain't got shit inside. So Micro, being chopped and unappealing, is not seeking validation. If he does not seek validation, right? If he's chopped and does not seek validation, he is not worrying about others. If he's not worrying about others, he is able to specialize in something important. Now, by specializing in something important, he creates his own meaning. By creating his own meaning, he's able to master it. People that are seeking validation are seeking for something unique, right? But what is unique, again, is something that is that does not conform to societal norms. Mastering meaning, or being the master of something, being a master means that you are better than normal. That's what being a master means. You're better than normal. You can't really read that anymore. I don't think I read it Micro right now, but to be a master at something. In fact, I should probably do this, right? Create some meaning. So to be the master at something means that you are above average. Right? So to be the master at something means that you are above average. So again, it's really simple. If you're above average, it means you're unique. means you're unique, and that if you're unique in that way, and if you are a master of something meaningful, and you're above average, you're unique. If you're unique, you will know. If you know that you have validated yourself. And again, this self-validation is much more fruitful because of the fact that, one, it comes from you, and two, if you are seriously engaging in these principles, you will understand the difficulty of a specific subject that you take part in. And by understanding that, you will understand that if you've mastered it and you've come to master it and you finally made it, only you could tell you have achieved something that others have not, and you achieved it in the correct manner, right? So you are one that is capable of validating. You're like a master, for example. You're the one that knows the rules of validation. So by knowing the rules of validation, you immediately become someone of an upper echelon, and of course in the workforce and in much more important fields, this is very important because then you stand out, right? But the people that are seeking validation are seeking their own sort of validation, right? So by seeking their own sort of validation, I don't know, because I want to keep this, but we'll have to do this, right? This goes here, but the people that are seeking their own validation are not a master at anything. Why are they not masters? Well, because they're distracted. They're seeking validation. And for their own specialty. Fruitful specialty, I should say. No fruitful specialty. And without a fruitful specialty, you would immediately find these people over here, the unique ones, to be, one, above average, and two, masters, right? So if you have no specialty, but someone has a specialty in something you have interest in, but you've never actually specialized in it because you're too busy seeking validation, you will immediately look up to the person that is the master of that thing, the master who is above average, unique, and they would know. So yeah, I mean, I think that's pretty much it, right? So, I mean, that's why you should be chopped. If you're chopped, you have more time to specialize. Again, chopped meaning unappealing. Unappealing meaning not trying to be appealing. You have the ability to specialize in a specific interest. By specializing in that interest, you become a master of that interest. Master being above average, which is unique. And those that seek validation are not specialized, they're seeking validation. Therefore, they're not unique. They're part of a category of seeking validation. And they look up to the ones that master the interest in which they have. Yeah. So, yeah, that's my video. Hope you enjoyed. Let me get the thumbnail real quick. So, yeah. I gotta go to bed.